Welcome to the I Saved You, Now Do the Dishes podcast. I'm author and speaker Carrie Severson. In each episode, I'll share stories and tips from my experience with caregiving and advocacy through my husband's cancer journey. Hi, welcome back to I Saved You, Now Do the Dishes podcast. I'm your host, Carrie Severson. Thanks for being here. On here, we talk about caregiving, advocacy, marriage. I share tips and all those categories. Today's episode is going to be a good one because today is the day I start talking about my spicy Viking on a rampage. That was my alter ego that I used to support my husband through his cancer journey. And that's my tip for you today, for you caregivers, you advocates. Find an alter ego. I was actually working with a friend. She was a client of mine. I was helping her create stories when she was going through cancer, and her alter ego was badass cancer babe. And I always thought it was fun. And I was like, wow, you created an alter ego. How cool. But I understood I got it really down deep in my bones on the first day of the third week of my husband's cancer treatment experience. So it's Monday. He had just had a really bad weekend. We were at the ER the Saturday before for pain management. He was in tremendous pain, 8 out of 10. The following day, I was at a pot dispensary getting him gummies. And they worked to the point where he couldn't get off the couch. And he was trying so hard to get up, but he just couldn't. So Monday, he was in a ton of pain. He was moving really slow. And he was ready to quit. He didn't want to do it anymore. I didn't rush him. I didn't bug him. I didn't push him. I watched the clock tick by. I was very aware that we were going to miss our meeting with the PA, the physician's assistant in radiation. We were going to miss it because he was still, a slowpoke. But he has cancer. He's going to be a slowpoke. I'll figure it out. So I get him in the car and he is grouchy. He is Oscar the Grouch. Did not want to go, threatening to quit. Tip 2, for those caregivers and advocates, at some point you're going to have to sort of turn a blind eye and acknowledge the fact that this is incredibly challenging. I get you want to quit, but I'm not going to let you quit. It was hard for me. It was hard for me to be the person to drive him to this torture chamber every day, right? Like, I need you to get in that proton radiation machine and let those dudes zap your body full of drugs so that they kill the cancer in you. That wasn't a fun position to be in. But the alternative was watch him slowly die. Who knew if it would have killed him that year or 10 years later? So buckle up, Buttercup. Here we go. To radiation, So we get to our meeting late. We actually totally missed the meeting with the PA. We get in to see the nurse. He gets into radiation finally. So while he's in radiation, it's supposed to take 30 minutes. I run across the street to get him a bottle of water, baking soda and salt. It made this mixture that would help him with his dry mouth and pain. And he was supposed to swish it around and spit it out all day long. But we forgot it at home. So I'm like, I'm going to go across the street. I'm going to grab your stuff. I'm going to make you a new bottle. I'll be right back. So I do in the bathroom. I make it for him. I sit down and I'm sitting and I'm waiting and I'm sitting and I'm waiting. And I'm like, I wonder what's going on. It's been a while. Finally, the person behind the desk, he nods at me and I wave at him and he's like, "Where's Gavin?" And I'm like, "What?" He's back there. And he's like, "He's not back here." Okay. So that man and I go up and down the hallway. We look down restricted hallways because there's a chance, he could have been down there somehow. I'm looking in changing rooms. I'm looking in closets. And finally, he finally answers a text that I sent. Hey, where are you? We were supposed to meet and sit there in the lobby, and the PA would have come out and got us when she was ready. And she was ready. She wanted to meet. She had a little bit of time. She had another cancellation. We were going to squeeze in. So Gavin sends me a text back. It's too much today. I want to be by myself. Again, I understand you're in a ton of pain. We need to have this meeting so that you get drugs. That's the whole point of meeting with this person today. This woman is the person that is going to give you a script to give you drugs so that you aren't in pain and you can eat and drink. I need you to come here. And he's like, no, I want to be by myself. Okay. So my blood pressure went through the roof, and I'm thinking of all sorts of creative names for this man right now. I'm pretty upset, keeping it together. And it suddenly dawns on me, where can you go in a big hospital and pretend like life is normal? And my husband is a foodie, and I'm like, he's in the cafeteria. I totally know it. So I storm upstairs. I see him in the far back corner, and I allowed my body to have I allowed myself to have an out of body experience so that I didn't gouge his eyeballs out in public. Our eyes meet. I slowly sit down. I don't say anything. I calmly let my soul leave my body for a second. I'm taking a very calm approach, and I'm like, you have to come with me. They won't meet with me without you, and they're going to give you drugs. I need you to be there. And in my mind, I'm like, don't scream at him. Don't scream at him. Be loving. Be patient. Don't kick him in the nuts. But I wanted to really badly. He's acting like a toddler. I'm in pain. I don't want to do it anymore. I quit. So I'm like, honey, we've got a lot more of this to go. I need you to come get drugs so that you can be pain-free. And he finally agrees, and he's like, I don't want you in the room though. I don't care. Just go get your stuff. So I'm sitting out in the lobby, and the actual receptionist comes out and gets me. And he's like, the PA wants you in the room. I'm like, that's because she's smart and she knows who is the manager of this whole situation. Because when you're in as much pain as he is, somebody has to be there to help. And what's so unfortunate is so oftentimes they're not. Like, I have so many girlfriends who have had breast cancer, who've had really horrendous situations where they're in there by themselves. I cannot imagine what that would have felt like and how isolating and how lonely. I know if I weren't pushing him, he would have quit because he was in so much pain. Even at the third week, he was in so much pain. So he gets narcotics. I want to say that first round, it was instant release oxy. And we picked him up at the pharmacy right away. While I wait for him to finish chemo, I'm allowing my body to sort of settle at how stressful that whole experience was for me. And I'm watching him. And I'm thinking, man, I deserve a sandwich named after me. I deserve an ice cream named after me. You know what I mean? And it was in that moment that I adopted my alter ego. I realized how I was going to have to handle the rest of the situation: stern, direct, strong, fierce. I was going to have to invoke the ancestral line of every Viking in my family tree to march him across the finish line here. And that's what I knew it was going to take. I knew it was going to take practically carrying him over the finish line for him to finish this thing. So right then and there, I'm watching him in chemo, and I'm like, the ice cream I choose to be named after me is Fudge You, sweetheart. This sandwich is like Guard Your Loins or Watch Your Tongue. And I posted it. I put it on Caring Bridge, and I had so many comments from my family that are like, "What about like double nutcracker for for an ice cream treat?" Or what was something else with I can't remember the names of the sandwiches, but it was so much fun. And a girlfriend of mine actually made me stickers that said "Spicy Viking on a Rampage" after that. Alter egos. It worked. So we go home. He takes his first dose, waits a little bit, and he tries it with just a sip of water. I'm sitting on the couch. I'm like holding my breath. I'm waiting for him to wince in pain and scream, and he would punch the air. He would be in so much pain, he would punch the air. And he doesn't. He takes a little sip, and he cocks his head, and he takes 2 or 3 gulps. And he hadn't been able to do that in weeks. Gulps of water. And he looks at me and he's like, "Oh my gosh, it's working." And he's like, "Honey, can you please make me a grilled cheese sandwich?" And I loved it. Grilled cheese sandwich. At this point, we were being lectured on his weight because he was losing pounds. I mean, every day you'd weigh in, he was less and less because he was in so much pain. He was eating less and less. So I was Googling how many calories in a half a cup of shredded cheese, how many calories in 2 tablespoons of butter. And I was counting calories for my husband so that he would get his weight up. And I remember standing at the stove that night, listening to the sound of butter and bread. His sandwich had to be like 750 calories of just cheese and butter. And the sizzling of it was so relaxing. I remember taking a really big exhale and smushing the bread down with the spatula and hearing the sound and the crackling. And my body just started to sway. And that's always my sign that I'm in sympathetic. I'm in sympathetic nervous system. I'm in a state of relaxation. That's my sign. I started to sway. And that will happen after you take big exhales. You're, breathing. You can regulate your nervous system with various breath techniques. My favorite one is box breathing, holding for 4, exhaling for 4, holding for 4, inhaling for 4. That's a Navy SEAL technique. There's another one, 4-7-8. You inhale for 4, hold for 7, exhale for 8. And as you exhale, you're making that sound like you're blowing through a straw. Shh. But right then, listening to the sound of the butter and the bread and watching the cheese ooze out, I was totally relaxed. At this point in his journey, eating was associated with pain. And so there was a lot of head trash going on, right? And so we would watch Food Network. We always watched guys' shows, Tournament of Champions, Grocery Games. I can't remember what else we were watching at that point, but we would watch Food Network until he finished every bite. And it would take him a long time to eat because he was afraid it was going to cause pain. And I remember falling asleep that night on the couch, watching him eat like an animal at the zoo. And I was just so excited. He was eating something normal and he wasn't in pain. At least not as much pain. Unfortunately, the timing of it all was something that we had to keep track of. So I bought a second whiteboard and I listed out all his pain management and times of it. And he had to stay on top of it. If he let it lapse even 30 minutes, an hour, he would go from like a 4 to an 8 pretty quickly. So we were carrying stuff around with us everywhere we went. If he couldn't swallow it, and it was really little, I would crush it up and he would shoot it. I mean, just in his mouth and let it absorb. He was trying everything just to get it down. It's not an easy experience, right? Being the person that has to stand on this side and watch your loved one experience so much pain and not know what to do. But I could do that. I could invoke my Viking heritage. I could be the strongest woman ever I ever had to be before. I could make him grilled cheese with as much butter and cheese as possible. Do everything I could to get him calories, and I could drive him to his appointments. It became like a full-time job. It was a full-time job. I actually remember texting his dad. His dad was a caregiver for his stepmom for years before she passed away from cancer. And I remember texting him and I was like, how do people do anything else but this? How do you have a job? And the sad truth is, in the United States today, there are 53 million family caregivers. And the majority of us are 9-to-5ers and then 5-to-9ers. A lot of us have to take time off from work for our caregiving jobs. I was fortunate enough where I could take on projects, public relation projects, book coaching clients, and I would work them around Gavin's schedule. I wouldn't schedule calls on the long days at the hospital. I would take early morning meetings and then typically later in the afternoon. I made it work. And when we ended up in the hospital where he had to get admitted, I went to all my clients and I was like, you're not going to hear from me for a little while because shit just got really heavy and I need to take care of my husband. That's the reality for a lot of us. We depend on our families. We depend on our communities. We depend on our churches. We depend on the generosity of strangers and organizations like Lasagna Love, which I mentioned last time, local markets or, your local community. There's plenty of opportunities for you to get support, getting your loved ones to and from their appointments. Food services, food support. In Phoenix, there's a place called the Joy Bus. They do meals for free for caregivers and patients. The hospital had grocery gift cards available. There are plenty of services. You just have to, unfortunately, you have to know who to ask and you have to navigate that, right? But that is something that I kind of leaned into. And I don't think I would have had I not really realized on that day, that Monday, the third week, of who I was going to have to step into to take control of this, be the driver of this bus. I couldn't control the situation. I obviously couldn't control him, but I could control how I showed up as, who I was going to show up as. And when it called for it, I was absolutely a spicy Viking. And sometimes I had to be spicy Viking on a rampage. And I even wore a sticker. Next time, we'll get into the nitty-gritty of What happens when it gets really heavy and you have to take control of who's on the medical team. Thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed the episode. Would love to know your thoughts. Send me a note, make a comment. Who's listening, who's watching. Subscribe so that you can get the next episode. We drop episodes on Wednesdays. And if you're a caregiver, please remember that I love you, I see you, and it's okay to ask somebody else to do the dishes. Until next time.